For 5th 2022 Township meeting in order, please rise for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided pursuant to the New Jersey Open Public Meetings Law by posting a notice of this meeting on the bulletin board in the municipal building and by faxing notice of the meeting to the Atlantic City Press, Star Ledger, Camden Courier, and Atlantic County Record on January the 7th, 2022. Mr. Cheek?
Here.
Ms. Hopkins?
Here.
Mrs. Link?
Here.
Mr. Patali?
Here.
Mayor Kane?
Here. All right, I'd ask that you join me for a moment of silence for private reflection, please. All right, first on the list, we have guest presentations this evening. We have Atlantic County Utilities Authority budget presentation. Rick, please.
Thank you, Mayor. My name is Rick Doby. I'm the president of the ASUA. We're here for our annual presentation of our solid waste budget and rates. I handed out a package that provides information and background for everyone in detail. First is a letter concerning our yard waste collection contract and the increase that will come as a result of the cost of living increase. The next page, which is usually what we refer to as the report card, it shows the amount of waste that the township has brought to the ACUA or had the ACUA bring to it and activity costs over the last 10 years. And then also it's showing the recycling rate. One thing you should know is the amount of trash being collected from municipalities from homes and residents has been going down the last 2 years because since COVID, people are not as home as much as they were. That was the peak last year and the year before. So it's going down a bit, so you have less tonnage coming on behalf of the township going forward. So we projected a flat amount of waste coming. It may actually continue to go down. We are proposing a tip fee increase from $68.78 for the municipality to $76.35. That's an 11% increase. It's related to increased operational costs at the landfill, transfer station, and compost facility. So I think most of you know about the increase in personnel costs. Our employees this year received a 5% increase as opposed to the last 12 years, 2%. So that's an increase. Next year we're projecting a 4% increase. Of course, you are also aware of the health benefit increase at the state level, 21.5%, and also the pension costs have gone up about 12% for 2023. So they're building to that. Diesel costs, the equipment that is at the landfill, the transfer station, the compost center is all diesel. It's not compressed natural gas. Diesel costs went up $500,000 over what was budgeted this year, and we projected similarly in the future. Cost of dirt is way up. We use dirt to cover the landfill daily, cover the trash that's been placed. So that's up significantly, almost $500,000 going forward. The capital cost of continuing to expand our landfill on its approved footprint is significant. We raise the money within our budget. We don't borrow money for that. The next phase of the next two phases of our landfill expansion, which will give us capacity to 2028, is $16 to $17 million. At the third quarter of this coming year, we will be going out to bid for the first part of that, and so we need to have the money in hand. The rates that are proposed for municipalities, the taxpayers, are still the lowest, even with this 11% of all of South Jersey, and particularly lower than Cape May and Cumberland County are closest neighbors. We know this is a difficult year to do that. It's difficult on everybody. If this could be avoided, we would. For some history, you guys have some background here. Our rates have been very slow in increases over the last 20 years. You've seen the rate history. Again, we still have the lowest rates and will have the lowest rates going into the new year. Any questions, comments?
Committee? Questions, comments, Mr. Dovey?
Did you say the landfill, the cost of dirt is going up by how much?
About $500,000.
A year or
Yeah, a year.
a year?
So, there's really only one source anymore, one pit. It's over in Dunbright in Morris River Township. There used to be pits all over Atlantic County and closer to us. They're all closed and played out. So there's really only one, and it's further away. So they have to haul it with high diesel fuel prices. So part of the cost is getting the dirt on a daily basis. It's transportation costs.
Wow.
So if there's nothing else, if anything should come up later, we can follow up. I'm going to be happy to talk to anybody.
Nothing additional, committee? Rick, thank you. Appreciate it.
Have a great holiday. Merry Christmas. Good to see you all.
All right, next we have a presentation from the Excellence in Historic Preservation. We're going to do this first, Cheryl? Or you want to do it at the same time? Do we have a PowerPoint or?
Yes.
Do we want to do that first and then we'll do the proclamation? You want to do, okay. They gave me a couple documents here to go over, quite a few documents. The interesting one I see is that Reverend Ash has been serving us here in Mays Landing since 1963. And I know it's close to that. So we'll begin with the First United Methodist Church of Mays Landing. This has been a Methodist congregation active in Mays Landing since the 1820s. They constructed a church. Is that right? Okay. On site in 1848, it was destroyed by fire in 1888, and that structure was replaced by the Gothic Revival style church that stands there today. In 1913, the church was raised to accommodate the construction of a basement level, and over the years, the church's exterior has undergone little or no significant alterations, thus preserving its original character. The first line of the church is characterized by steeply pitched pyramidal roof and its distinctive three-story square tower, which is covered with scalloped wood shingles and is capped by a cross-shaped canal. The pair of 6-panel wood front doors and the beautiful stained glass windows are all original to the 134-year-old church. The 1990 Mays Landing Historic District National Register of Historic Places nomination identified the first United. How many words can we get in one? United Methodist Church of Mays Landing as a contributing resource to the district due to its date of construction and design. Mays Landing Presbyterian Church. The Mays Landing Presbyterian Church was constructed in 1841. The church was built on land donated by Samuel Richards, whose family operated the local Weymouth iron furnace. It is a non-denominational Christian meeting house, was located near the site during the late 18th century, and was demolished by the late 1840s. A group of 44 people contributed just over $1,000 for the construction of the church. The building was officially dedicated in 1844. The building is the earliest existence of church in Mays Landing and among the earliest surviving churches in Atlantic County.
The Mays Landing Presbyterian Church is also significant for its association with Reverend Allen Brown, 1820 to 1907, a prominent Presbyterian pastor who spearheaded the growth of the Presbyterian ministry in southern New Jersey. Reverend John T. Ash, our very own, the third, has served as pastor of the Mays Landing Presbyterian Church since 1963. The Mays Landing Presbyterian Church is a key contributing resource to the Mays Landing Historic District as the earliest extent of church in Mays Landing and is a well-preserved example of a Greek revival-style church. In 1982, it was individually listed on the National Register of Historic Places under Criterion A in the region of religion and under Criterion C in the area of architecture. Tying them both together is the Westcote Free Burying Ground. The Westcote Free Burying Ground at 6007 Main Street is situated between the Presbyterian Church and the Methodist Church that is one of the earliest cemeteries in Mays Landing. It was formally established in 1812, and Colonel Westcott deeded the property to a chosen board of trustees. Westcott, who served in the Revolutionary War, opened a general store in Mays Landing in 1783 and came to own thousands of acres of land across southern New Jersey. Colonel Westcott specified that land be donated for the creation of a burying ground and a place of divine worship to be used by the Baptists, Methodists, Presbyterians, and Quakers, and for a burying ground for all people without exception. Today, the Westcote Free Burying Ground is jointly owned and cared for by the Methodist and Presbyterian churches. This cemetery has been a reminder of the unity and harmony that has long been created between those two remarkable churches for nearly 200 years. And tonight we honor both of them as an example of cooperation for the entire community. We are presenting proclamations to both for excellence in historic preservation, and that proclamation reads as follows. Whereas the Township Committee of the Township of Hamilton, the citizens of the Township, local organizations, and outside entities have endeavored to preserve, protect, and sites in the Township of Hamilton which are deemed to have historical significance. And whereas the Historic Preservation Commission strives to support the efforts of the Township Committee to preserve and protect the properties that have valuable historical significance and add to the charm of historic Mays Landing. And whereas the Township Committee and Historic Preservation Commission recognize the hard work and dedication of our residents who have worked so hard to successfully preserve the historic integrity of their homes and properties and keep the history of the township alive and fresh on the minds of everyone. Now therefore be it proclaimed that we, the members of the Township Committee and the Historic Preservation Commission, Township of Hamilton, County of Atlantic, State of New Jersey, on this day, December 5th, 2022, honor the First United Methodist Church of Mays Landing and the Presbyterian Church of Mays Landing in recognition of their hard work and commitment to preserving the original historic character and charm of their properties.
When you said 59 years, you took away one thing, because I was going to say I've only been here 175 of the church's years. But we thank you for this recognition. We are indeed committed to the preservation of the church. Recently, because of a state mandate, we had to put a second exit in the sanctuary and do that through one of the windows and then an outside fire escape. And I had an idea, but it didn't go over with Warren DeGrossa, the inspector. I said, can't we put one of those brass poles like they have in the fire companies, and we need to go, we just jump on it? But we're pleased that the construction did not alter the effect of the appearance of the sanctuary. And we're glad to not only continue to preserve the facility, but also to continue not only in the nurture of our members in their faith, but also to be a center for the community where many different organizations use our facilities throughout the week and throughout the year. And so we look forward to many more years of being here in Mays Landing, but we do appreciate immensely this recognition of our historic significance and preservation. And thank you, Mayor, and the committee and the commission.
Our pleasure.
As you may know, United Methodist pastors are appointed for a certain amount of years, so I could never have been here for 59 years because they wouldn't, but I have been here for 12 years, which is very long in the United Methodist denomination. And I must say that because pastors change, it's the trustees that have to take care of the building and keep everything up to snuff with the preservation of the historical significance of our building. So I give thanks to John Johnson, the chair of our trustees, and the rest of the congregation. Also, since he did some commercial, we are grateful that the building had to be raised to put in the basement, because now we have the Main Street Food Pantry in the basement, which serves, I don't know, lots of people every week. And we are so grateful for any of you who have donated to that food pantry. So thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, committee.
Next, we have addition and deletion of late agenda items to be considered for action this evening. I do not have a list. Are we good for this evening? Okay. Next, we'll move on to 2, early public comment on agenda items, excluding items listed for public hearing. Second?
Alice Henry, all in 3A.
Would we like to hear the presentation and then the questions? Yes. Would that work for you? Yes. Is everyone in agreement? There were 3 people that signed up? We're good? Okay. Ms. Gibbons? Sure.
Hi, everyone. My name is Emily Gibbons. I am redevelopment counsel for the township. I was asked to talk with you tonight about the process for redevelopment and rehabilitation, and just a general understanding of, or explanation of how the redevelopment plans for a particular property or for the entire township would be adopted. Initially, in order for an area to be declared an area in need of redevelopment, you have to go through a process whereby the committee would select property that they would like to have investigated. And they send that to the planning board for the township. And then the planning board and its planner will investigate the property and determine whether or not substantial evidence exists that it satisfies one of the 8 criteria under the local redevelopment and housing law to be declared an area in need of redevelopment. Property owners are provided with notice. There's notice in the newspaper that that hearing is going to take place, and a public hearing is held where the planner presents his report to the planning board. Public is permitted to ask questions, and then the planning board can ask questions of the planner. If someone has contrary information to what's being presented, they are permitted to present that information, and the planning board will evaluate it and make a determination as to whether or not that substantial evidence exists to declare the area in need of redevelopment. If they vote in favor of that, they will then make their recommendation back to the township committee that they feel that the area satisfies the criteria. Or they will send back and say, we do not think the area does, or we think a portion of the area does. Once that determination is made, the committee will then take a vote. If they agree that the substantial credible evidence exists, they will declare the area or a portion of it as in need of redevelopment. Once that's done, that designation gets sent up to the Department of Community Affairs for the state of New Jersey. And they will review the determination, not for whether or not it satisfies the substantial credible evidence. It's not like an appeal review. It is just to ensure that the areas are not restricted from being declared an area in need of redevelopment. So the state is made aware, it's part of their catalog of information that they have on their website, that this particular area has been declared in need of redevelopment. Once that designation is made, then the Township Committee has the ability under the redevelopment law to establish what's called a redevelopment plan for an entire parcel area that's part of a redevelopment area. A redevelopment area can be one lot, or it can be many lots. And when you adopt a redevelopment plan, it can be for one lot or many lots, depending on what the project is. Once that redevelopment plan is vetted by a committee, it again goes to the planning board. And the planning board reviews the plan and makes recommendations as to whether or not it is consistent with the township master plan. So they evaluate the different uses that are being proposed, the standards, the bulk standards that have to be applied to any application, and makes a determination as to whether or not it's consistent with the township's master plan. If they find that it is consistent with the master plan, they will send that recommendation back to mayor and committee, and they vote on it. It is an ordinance, so it has to get introduced, referred to the planning board, heard by the planning board, and then back to mayor and committee, when they will hold a public hearing so that the public has the opportunity to ask questions and put their comments on the record with regard to whether or not that plan is appropriate for the area, appropriate for the neighborhood. And then mayor and council will take a vote on that. And if they do, in fact, adopt the ordinance and adopt the plan, then that becomes either superseding zoning, which means that whatever it was zoned before goes away, and this is the only zoning that's in place, or it can become what's called an overlay. Generally, the overlays are if there is a specific project in mind, and the committee is looking to enter into what's called a redevelopment agreement. So that's a contract between the township and the developer. The redevelopment agreement allows the committee to act a little bit more like a business than a municipality. It can hold the developer or redeveloper more accountable than the planning board can with placing conditions on the site plan approval. So you can contract for things in a redevelopment agreement that you can't do through approvals at the planning board. Any application, however, that comes through, any development that comes pursuant to a redevelopment plan, any submission has to go through the planning board for site plan approval. Anyone who lives within 200 feet of a project, like any other project that goes before the planning board, must receive notice of that application and must have an opportunity to be heard at the planning board with regard to that site plan. If the planning board finds that all of the criteria under the plan have been met, they may grant approvals for that. With regard to a rehabilitation designation, there are separate criteria to be declared an area in need of rehabilitation. There are 6 separate criteria. This township, the entire township has been declared an area in need of rehabilitation. I believe, if I remember correctly, it is because the housing stock within the township is over 50 years old. It's not a high bar for that declaration. It doesn't mean blight. It means that your housing stock is over 50 years in age, and you could use a plan that would help to move things forward in a positive direction. One of the things that would help move things forward in a positive direction is under the local redevelopment and housing law, with a declaration of an area in need of rehabilitation, the committee has the ability to offer 5-year tax abatements to all property owners within the township. So if a resident would like to make an improvement to their property, and your assessment goes up, that increase in assessed value could potentially be abated over a 5-year period. So that gives residents, as opposed to just businesses, the opportunity to benefit from that designation and the potential for a tax abatement. Same process is in place, however, for a redevelopment plan for a rehabilitation area. And any designation also has to go up to the DCA for DCA to review, and if the DCA finds it appropriate, because it's an area that is designated under the state plan for redevelopment or rehabilitation, then the approval is valid. So I think with that, that's a general, very general explanation. But if anyone has questions for me, I'd be happy to.
Committee, do you have questions before we get the 3 individuals in the public? Because maybe your questions will answer some of theirs. Any questions of Ms. Givens before we allow them to speak? All right, seeing none, then Joe, would you call the first person, please?
Sure thing, Mayor. First one is
Like to
Alice
hear their
Henry.
questions first.
Do you have a question? Well, please.
Yeah, I do not recall receiving anything from the planning board regarding Trophy Park. I did not.
So
did not
Trophy,
receive that.
the only thing that's happened with Trophy Park is that a memorandum of understanding has been entered into with that group. That group wanted the township to entertain their proposal. And in order to do so, a lot of work has to be done. My work, your engineer's work, planner's work, and it's inappropriate for the township to bear those costs. When a developer is looking to do work in your township and have your professionals explore as to whether or not that project could potentially ever come to fruition. So we entered into that memorandum of understanding with Trophy Park so that they would post their escrow. It was in the amount of $25,000, and that escrow covers the costs of my work, other time for township professionals who are spending time on this to make a determination as to whether or not the committee would even want to move forward with the project. So there's no redevelopment plan in place. They haven't presented a sufficient site plan for us to take it back to committee. I've recently requested of them a list of all of the outside agency approvals that they're going to require. I think it's incumbent upon us and the committee to know exactly what it is that they have to do in order to be able to see their proposal come to fruition. There are DEP issues, there are Pinelands issues, water and sewer issues, DOT issues, FAA issues. And I'm not so sure that they're fully aware of everything that they have to do, but that's on them to come up with that list and come back to us so that we can have a full discussion about that. So the planning board hasn't seen a plan because we don't have a plan. This is very, very early negotiation stage, and the MOU, Mrs. Link, was specifically to get them to post the escrow so that the township and the residents are not bearing the cost of that investigation.
Yeah, but it started a very intense investigation by the residents. And according to the NJSA 40A semicolon 12A-1 local redevelopment and housing law, the purpose was to arrest and reverse conditions of deterioration of housing, commercial, and industrial facilities. Now, why did it come before redevelopment?
So because the entire township is an area in need of rehabilitation, and this particular area is part of that, It's not a redevelopment area, and that's the distinction I was trying to make at the beginning of my conversation with everyone, is there are two separate designations. One is a redevelopment area that takes the substantial credible evidence. The other is the rehabilitation designation, and the entire township is designated, and that allows us to move forward with an MOU to negotiate if it is appropriate. And we are at the stage now where we are trying to make that determination of to whether or not the project that they have presented is appropriate for that location and appropriate for the township. So we are in very, very early stages, and no decisions have been made other than that developer is who should be paying for our investigation going forward.
Well, that sounds more appropriate, but a lot of these redevelopment areas had to go through planning and,
They all do.
okay.
They all do.
According to what the
All
the
of
law
them do,
is.
yes.
Now, why did you feel it was necessary or recommend that Hamilton Township be under an entire redevelopment laws?
The rehabilitation designation?
Yes.
I don't remember personally making that recommendation. I know that we discussed with Mayor Schenker when he first had us come to the township and talk about the different things that could happen. A designation for rehabilitation allows you to, I've heard the term open for business. So you would like to see more development in your town, and through a redevelopment or rehabilitation designation, that allows you to act a little bit quicker in terms of adoption of a redevelopment plan that will assist a developer who may not otherwise be able to have his or her project move forward in a specific location, because changes to zoning might take a very long time under traditional processes. But with a redevelopment, you can do it in a little bit more of an expedient way. And as I said earlier, you can do it for one lot at a time, and it's not considered spot zoning under the redevelopment law.
Well, I think the information that I received and the impression that I received was the redevelopment should be done via the cotton mill. It's been a terrible blight to our community for years. I think that definitely was in the thought process, and that what we have done is dismiss all of our master plan by doing redevelopment.
Well, the master plan, when you're doing a redevelopment plan for a particular property, you are acting pursuant to and consistently with your master plan. The review that you do at the planning board level of any proposed redevelopment plan ordinance is for consistency with your master plan. And so you're not trying to circumvent your master plan, you're trying to move forward with the goals and objectives that are set forth in your master plan, but in a way that allows for you to move, as I said, especially particularly when you have a project that may need some assistance. You know, oftentimes a redevelopment project is a larger project, riskier project. You're dealing with environmentally constrained properties, whether they are because they have wetlands or because they have environmental contamination and they need some assistance because it's going to be very costly to do the remediation or pare down the project because of other constraints on the site. But it's a good site to see. Like Cotton Mill itself has a lot of constraints through CAFRA and DEP. So they need some assistance with regard to their zoning and with regard to potentially, nothing's been decided, financial agreement with the project, depending on what it is they present to the committee and whether or not that's something that's going to be beneficial for the township. So there's a lot of different layers with it, but as far as master plan, you're moving forward for consistency.
Well, it wasn't a very consistent thing to, entertain Trophy Park in a R5 area.
And again, they came to the zoning workshop with a proposal that is an interesting proposal and potentially could generate an awful lot of economic benefit for the township. The recommendation to enter into the MOU based off of that zoning workshop was because there are a lot of questions that the people who were in attendance at the workshop, and then when we talked with the mayor and deputy mayor, the project itself is very interesting, but there could be a great economic benefit to the township, understanding that there is an awful lot that needs to be worked out before they can move forward. That's why that MOU was entered into. If it is completely inconsistent with the master plan, if they can't get through Pinelands, if they can't get water and sewer, those are all of the things that have to be investigated. And again, that MOU is intended to have the escrow posted so that the residents are not the ones who are paying those fees.
So we should have received a recommendation from the zoning board?
Not the zoning board, that was a zoning workshop where there are members of the planning board, there are township engineer's office, the planning board engineer, the planner, traffic engineer, Ms. Crean, myself, when it's a redevelopment project, zoning secretary, a few members of zoning, a few members of planning, all sit and listen to the proposal and make a determination as to whether or not they feel that it is appropriate to explore it further.
But I never received any, result from that. I wasn't there. And I think that all township committee members, if a zoning, congregation of the sorts was together, that every one of us should have been appraised.
And I'm sure that will be taken back, and going forward, the zoning workshop committee will probably take that into consideration when they make their recommendations. That's not a recommendation that comes from any one person, so we would have to take that back and see who's in charge of that aspect of it. I am not.
Okay.
Emily, I have one question.
Sure.
Hindsight's always 20/20.
Sure.
And that putting Hamilton Township in a redevelopment zone, at the initial time it was done, I think it was done to expedite the growth of the town. I mean, I certainly would see the logic in a big global decision like that. But now you fast forward a couple of years, and we've now kind of stumbled across some stuff that we probably need more investigation on. In your opinion, should we maybe look at taking this redevelopment of all of Hamilton Township and defining some criteria and saying, the 100-year forest is never going to be developed. Let's isolate this. Should we go back and revisit that ordinance that puts us into an entire redevelopment and cherry pick what we want redeveloped?
So it's a rehabilitation designation, not redevelopment, the two distinctly different things. And there's no ordinance. It was a designation done via resolution.
Yeah.
And because you have the opportunity to adopt an ordinance, which would adopt your redevelopment plan, property by property, you can do that at that time. I don't recommend rescinding that overall designation because, as I said, that the criteria is met. Your housing stock is 50 years or older. And it has brought in quite a few projects to the township that have been beneficial to the township. And so I think that you still have that control. You haven't lost any control over what the zoning will be because they still have to go through that same process. They still, if someone has a proposal that they would like for the committee to consider, they have to come to committee and they have to make that proposal. Some of the projects go through zoning workshop first, but then they ultimately come back to committee if it's going to be a redevelopment project.
Okay, thank you.
Anything additional, committee?
Joe, would you call our first person, please?
Alice Henry, please.
Thank you, Ms. Gibbons, for coming out and talking to us about differentials, first and foremost, because it's been very confusing as a resident to understand this entire process. So I wanted to say thank you first and foremost. I also wanted to ask you, do you potentially have a business card that we could all reference as we're coming up with questions and things of that nature, and we would be able to communicate with you to further address these?
I do, but I don't know if I have.
Can't hear her. Can't hear her.
You can't hear her?
I apologize. I'm sorry, I'm not speaking loudly.
Just see if you can get a little closer, that's all. Thank you.
Is that better?
Would you check that, please?
Sorry. Better? I hope.
Can you hear in the back or no?
I don't know what's wrong.
Chantel, are you getting this? We're being picked up on video, so.
Okay. I apologize for those of you who can't hear me. I'm sorry about that. Ms. Givens, do you know, in regards to Trophy Park, has anything actually been completed yet?
By anything, you're referring to something that the township has done?
No, that they're in the process of investigating. Has any of the investigations been completed?
Not that I'm aware of, and that's why I requested a list from them of all of the outside agency approvals and their status. And I haven't gotten anything, because I wanted to be able to report to everyone when I talked to Mr. Patale about, coming and talking with everyone. I thought it would be a great idea to have some information, and I just don't have it from them.
Okay. I do believe that they're in the process of an endangered and threatened species study, and I was wondering if you had heard anything in regards to that yet, because I
No.
do know there's quite a few different creatures that live out there that are endangered and threatened in that particular area.
Yeah, I have not gotten any response back from them.
Okay. I did have some general comments as well, and I want to say with all due respect, and I understand the entire township of Hamilton is listed as a rehabilitation zone.
That's right, that's right.
Okay. It's just not about whether, it's like, to me, it's not about whether or not the body has the regulatory authority to create these vast overlay zones for the purposes of rehabilitation and potentially demolishing something that maybe shouldn't be targeted for rehabilitation. So 268 acres of trees is a lot of trees, especially when there are so many blighted areas in the community that might be better served with businesses. I'm concerned and want to make sure that the committee is doing what's right and exercising the will of the people of the Township of Hamilton and not providing deference to a private investor looking to skirt existing zoning requirements. Sorry about that. Back in 2018, when the committee voted itself, in my opinion, an immense amount of power through this creation of the redevelopment and rehabilitation agreement, we need to consider that with this great power comes great responsibility to the community and protecting the community's self-interests. So it's not about whether or not we can create these agreements and create these overlay zones. It's about whether or not they should, particularly in the case of Trophy Park. We elect all of you leaders to come out to represent our interests and to govern us on our behalf. So the decisions that you make have long-lasting implications and can affect drastically the fabric of our neighborhood. And I think most of us do not want to see our community torn down and in the interests of something that I never thought I would see. We purposely moved here knowing it's an RD5. And we're not talking about building 53 houses on 268 acres. We're talking about hotels, sporting complexes, and everything else. And that changes the entire fabric of our neighborhood. The cost of leadership is having to make tough decisions and carefully considering and weighing factors for and against particular viewpoints or initiatives. And while our community acknowledges that Mr. Nall may not be the only or last private developer to come before the committee asking for exceptions to be granted. So we would like to go make sure that we're preserving our neighborhoods and keeping them intact, which is consistent with the master plan. What we would ask, I guess, would be the following: is an amendment or a referendum related to the responsible usage of these overlay zones to support new development or previously undeveloped land. We believe that the creation of these overlay zones that lead to the destruction of previously undeveloped land would be considered irresponsible. In addition, I would also propose a stay regarding any votes related to this matter until such a time as the newly elected committee has come to power. We believe that the role of the committee is to responsibly represent and defend our township neighborhoods. We, the citizens of the Township of Hamilton, ask you to please consider your support for Trophy Park at the proposed location, citing the first tenet of the redevelopment plan, which speaks to keeping our neighborhoods intact. This past November, votes were cast, and we want to go and strongly advocate for those who are supporting what we believe is our goals towards keeping our neighborhoods intact. We, like others who live in the Township of Hamilton, have made this township our home, and we invest our time and money into it. We would hope that our leaders would govern as they would want to be governed. If the committee chooses to support Mr. Nall in his endeavors to create these overlay zones at the proposed location, we believe the committee will have overstepped the intended purpose of the redevelopment and rehabilitation agreements, and we intend to continue organizing and opposing this project at the proposed location. The proposed site is undeveloped land, which is adjacent to a privately owned parcel that has been identified as an area in need of redevelopment. And we believe that the role of the committee can and should include facilitation of communications between both potentially interested parties to help further those goals. That would be an effective way to kickstart redevelopment without needing to create these overlay zones in the first place, leading to subsequent destruction of undeveloped land for a previously unintended use case. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Good evening. Emily, I've spent many, many hours over the last few days preparing a list of questions, but because of things you've said here tonight threw me into a different little bit of a mode. So let's go to the cotton mill. In October of '05, I still have my notes on my steno pad for the meeting held in this room with 3 township committee people who are not in the room tonight, attending that meeting with, bond counsel was here, DCA Senate representative, there was a couple other professionals that were sent in to explain to the people who attended the meeting what is redevelopment, and that was October of '05. In December of '05, the Township Committee on a 4-to-1 vote voted to declare the cotton mill in need of redevelopment, not rehabilitation. That is under the redevelopment declaration passed in December of '05. My question on that is, have you reviewed any of the records starting in December of '05 regarding the cotton mill?
Not all of them. I have reviewed the redevelopment plan that's in place right now.
No. So where I was taking you with that question is, there was supposed to have been a redevelopment agreement put into place after that vote in December of '05. And as I tracked it over the decades, I never could get anybody to come up with minutes at this township committee adopted a redevelopment plan. It's like it just didn't happen. And as an aside, the fire that destroyed so much of that property was in, I believe, September 10th of 2007, because we sat at the Cove watching the blaze lighting up the whole sky in the early evening. And it's been like just a dormant situation. So there's been nothing shown to you that a redevelopment agreement was ever put into place by any prior township committee starting in '06.
I don't have any information with regard to a prior redevelopment agreement.
I'm sorry, let me-
2017.
Please stay with that for a second. If there is a redevelopment agreement that was done then, wouldn't that still be a binding document today?
It would not.
Why?
Because by its own terms, if it would terminate if it was not completed or even started,
Okay,
likely.
that's okay.
But I
It was
haven't
a
seen it, so
reaction to what you said.
I don't know exactly for sure.
All right. The next part you said is we're in need of rehabilitation. I've been around a long time. Maybe I need some too. 50 years. Who said that?
Who said
Who said our housing stock is more than 50 years old?
it has, over 50% of your housing stock is 50 years of age, over 50 years of age, and a program for rehabilitation would help. Who said that? I can't tell you. I don't have the designation with me.
Do we know how many housing units were said to be 50% older than 50 years old? What is the number? Is it 1,000 units? Is it 2,000 units? Is it?
I will have to get that information for you. I don't have it.
Here's the reason, because I said I've been around a long time. Woodlands is 1973. My son was born in 73. That makes him 49. The Woodlands, 766 units, started in 73. Tavistock, 2002 or so, 20 years old, 210 units. Woods Landing, under construction now, 275 units. Chancellor Place, 150 units. Mays Landing Village, 200 plus, I don't know the exact number. Fairways, Mr. Sandman did the municipal service fee ordinance in 2001, I believe is the date on that. The Fairways is 455 units. I added up here, I'm almost at 4,000 units, just in what I could pull out of my mind, sitting here listening to the conversation. So I don't think we have 50% of our housing stock is over 50 years old. Somebody's not counting something right. I don't know how many housing units we have.
Well, as I said when I made my statement, I don't recall the basis. One of the criteria is that there are 5 other criteria that could be satisfied in order to declare an area in need of rehabilitation. What I will do is I will go back and I will look at the documents and I will have that answer for you when I am here again.
I just want to make sure we're on the right page. Now I'll go back to the list of questions that I came in with. And as Judy was mentioning, Judy mentioned the redevelopment ordinance, state law. I printed 3 pages, and it happens to be 40A, 12A-7, which includes 7E, which is what I was looking for. If this is redevelopment and is not applicable to this rehabilitation thing, then I need to, like, disregard that.
So there, under section 5, it sets forth the criteria.
And I'm section 7 on this.
You're section 7, so that's process. Section 5 sets forth the criteria, the substantial credible evidence that has to be met in order to be declared an area in need of redevelopment. Section 14 details the criteria for a rehab designation. And there are 6.
Okay.
Okay? And so, they all become intertwined, however, because section 14 refers back to section 6, which refers back to section 7 and 8.
So here's my focus tonight is not any one project. My focus is process. And the redevelopment statute talks about, and this just happened elsewhere locally, a presentation was made to the governing body. The lawyer then told that, the lawyer being their solicitor, then said, you make the decision to refer it over to the planning board. The planning board has 45 days to do the study and review and report back to the governing body. Then the governing body reserves the right to accept the recommendation to declare a need or say, no, we're not going to do it. Why isn't that the process being done here, that we first start with a conceptual presentation for everybody, all 5 members of our governing body, for them to have equal opportunity to hear the same conversation at the same time and have the same opportunity to ask questions before the governing body decides to send something to the planning board.
Well, that does happen.
I'm sorry?
That does happen. That is the process. That's the
it
process
hasn't
that we have
happened
followed.
yet.
No, it's called a workshop.
We haven't done a redevelopment plan for Trophy Park. We haven't done a redevelopment plan. For any designation that has been, that I've been involved with the township, it's come to committee, and from committee, it's been recommended to the planning board.
Only one that I'm aware of. There could be more, because of COVID shutting us all down, so.
Any that I have done on behalf of the township have gone through the process that's set forth in the statute.
All right, so let's go to the MOU. You adopt an MOU, but they're on the consent agenda. My question is, who writes the memorandum? MOU is Memorandum of Understanding.
Understanding, correct.
Who writes that text? Who decides what is in a memorandum?
I wrote the memorandum of understanding.
So each one, you wrote it, but without consultation with the 5 governing body members.
No, that's not correct, and it's presented to them for them to review and vote on.
After the fact,
After
after
the
it's
fact.
already written.
After it's written, yes.
After it's written. But why wouldn't
That
it
is
be
how a
discussed?
resolution is, that is how an ordinance is. You write it, you present it to committee, they review it, they can ask questions about it and the content of it. Public can ask questions about it and the content of it. The questions are answered, and then they vote.
Well, in the reality, and referring specifically to August 15th, there were 2 MOUs on the consent agenda, and only...
I don't make
because-
up the agenda.
I understand, but because they're on the consent agenda, if it wasn't for people like me saying, why is this here? What does this mean? We're focusing on how it got to the consent agenda, not the document. We can't comment from this audience because we don't have access to a document prior to it coming up at a township meeting. They're telling us we can't have it till after it's voted on here. So there is no opportunity for the citizenry to speak up on it. Okay, I'm good with that. When should we expect, when does Hamilton send to the planning board for a study? So when are any of these projects, and I don't know how many there are, that's another question.
Oh,
How many projects are you working on?
Right now?
Correct.
So I'm working on,
You don't have to name them, I just like.
no, I'm just trying. 4 or 5, depending on whether or not one is still in process.
Okay, so the next comment, next question I have, because when I was on the planning board, I did go to workshops. Who decides to send something to a workshop? Because a workshop is a single piece of paper, it's the attendance sheet with the block and the lot, the time it starts, the time it ends, and initialed by every person like you who attends, because that's what they use for their billable hours for attending the workshop. But not one piece of paper, not one picture, not one report is generated from those workshops. It's literally secret. So how is this in the best interest of the people who don't have access to the workshop, which also includes the governing body, because they're not there either? The process is the problem.
That's noted.
Thank you. I don't blame you. You're here to answer questions, and I work hard on my questions. Who decides the contents of the redevelopment or rehabilitation agreement? Because this word tax abatement is getting bandied about, and people think, well, this will be a good thing because we'll have tax rateables. Well, no, you won't if there's an abatement.
Well, that's not correct.
Thank you.
That's not correct.
The land will be taxed and the improvements will be abated over 5 or longer. I don't know how long because I haven't seen one yet.
Ms. Dix, thank you. Okay. You have other questions, please?
Couple more. Who decides the amount of the tax abatements?
That would be committee. Yeah, it could be
I
based
didn't hear
on,
what he said.
he said,
Based on the percent,
so there's,
Percentage of the improvement?
100%, 80%, 60%.
Okay. That's a 5-year.
that's a 5-year. So the long-term
5-year
tax
base.
abatements can be based off of percentage of revenues. It could be based off of other formulas, depending on whether or not there's bonding in place. There's a lot of different things to consider, and that decision is made in consultation with committee and the chief financial officer. And oftentimes, we bring in a financial advisor who takes a look at everything and makes an overall analysis as to whether or not the proposal is adequate.
Two more quickly. And Steve happens to be here. June 18th of 2018, the Township Committee voted to have EDA prepare a rehab plan, cost not to exceed $6,500. But in December 6th of 18, the Planning Board had you presenting to them, you referred in the Planning Board minutes to the October 8th of 2018 plan, but I can't find the plan on the internet to see if it's EDA's plan that you were talking about. You carved out Article 13, several sections that created a problem, so they had to pull the ordinance. The ordinances then came up in February of 2019. It's Ordinance 1897.
I'd have to look at the documents. I can't answer anything.
That's okay, that's okay. But should we assume that his rehab plan is what we're working with today?
I really don't know what you're referring to.
All right. And you answered the question about the projects. So the last question is, what liability is on us, the citizens of this town, for money that's being spent by any proposed conditional redeveloper, I think is the language in your minutes, for projects that don't get approved? Are we going to be held in some way liable as taxpayers?
No.
I would suggest not answer that.
Well, the MOU, if we've entered into an MOU with an escrow posted, for any of those projects where a conditional redeveloper has been named by the committee and they have posted their escrow, for any of the work that's done that's related to that project, the conditional redeveloper through the MOU has agreed to pay those interim costs. It does not have to result in a redevelopment agreement or a redevelopment plan. It may not be 100%. It is a contract.
Thank you, I appreciate the time.
Thank you, Ms. Dix.
Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Good evening.
Full disclosure, I'm a member of the Township Zoning Board. I
Thank
have
you for
been
your service.
Maybe 10 years. I've had the pleasure and honor to serve on this board as well as the planning board. So I have experience in this, as many of you do. I'm not interested in questions about specific, because I don't want to disqualify myself if I should end up hearing this. I didn't hear really anything about D variances and who approves D variance, use variances. And that's the job of the zoning board. The way the system works, and this, quite frankly, the system has worked in this township since zoning, I think, was adopted in the 50s. And it has worked very well with planning board and zoning board. That's what these two boards are, that is their purpose. So the way it works that generally, please correct me, you're the expert, a developer chooses a piece of ground or a property that has been developed, and then the commercial properties, they'll hire their own professionals, they'll develop a application, it'll go to the zoning office, zoning officer will determine if it goes to the zoning board or the planning board, depending primarily if there's a D variance that was required. I didn't hear a whole lot about zoning board tonight. So essentially, the way I interpret this is that this developmental ordinance, and if I could read section 4 of the ordinance adopting a redevelopment plan for the entirety of the township, comma, a designated rehabilitation area, that's two words or two phrases in the same sentence. So section 4, the redevelopment plan incorporates the underlying zoning, currently in effect throughout the township. We have a zoning map, as you know. Residential, commercial, there's probably 20 of them. And it's not intended to supersede any applicable provisions in the township's land use regulations, zoning, use variances included, any specific redevelopment plans which have been adopted by the township committee. The way I see this is that this redevelopment ordinance does in fact supersede the approvals of D variances.
No.
Because, let me finish, if I could. The way it works, if a application goes to the zoning board, because specifically it needs a use variance, there are C variances, but primarily a D variance, particularly on undeveloped land, empty land. So if a developer wants to develop a piece of property in, say, residential zone or any other, we got FA 10, 70, 5, low volume, they'll go to the zoning board. The first thing that is determined if that use gets approval, because by the very nature of that use is not permitted in, for example, a residential area. There's certain advertising provisions. There are meetings set up once a month. All of the 7+ alternates get the plans. There's advertising. It's a public hearing. The applicant will have his engineer, his planner, traffic engineer, landscape engineer. Likewise, the zoning board will have the exact thing representing the township. And then people, the residents, there's a 200-foot list, plus all other advertisements. And then all of those plans are available in the zoning office. Anybody can go in and view those plans, come to the zoning meeting, listen to all the testimony, and then have a chance to specifically ask the question. I think that that zoning process has been hijacked. And none of these plans will go to the zoning board. The township committee is tasked with making that decision on a D variance. I don't know that and correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know that the township committee, if one of those development plans comes before township committee, they will hear the applicants' professionals as well as the township's professionals, meaning the zoning board planner, developer, planner, engineer, traffic engineer, landscape engineer, so everybody gets a very clear picture of exactly what's going to happen. So what don't I get?
So with regard to a redevelopment plan, if there's a project that comes to committee.
For a use variance. Let's talk about use variances. I hear planning board, planning board, planning board.
Yes.
The planning board hears if there are no problems with, if a developer complies with all of the rules
Yes.
in the developmental ordinance.
If I may, just answer your question.
Spinks right through. If there's a
Can
use.
I
Go ahead.
answer your question?
I'm listening. Go ahead.
Okay. With a redevelopment project, if the redeveloper comes to the committee and the committee feels that the project is appropriate for the township, and it would otherwise need use variance approval, whether it's a height variance, density variance, particular use, other types of D variances, any one of the 6 D variances, they can come to mayor and committee and make their presentation. And mayor and committee can make a determination. Is it appropriate for this location? Is it appropriate for what we see coming for the township? For example, there are projects along the Black Horse Pike. CarMax is a proposed project that received approvals from the planning board because they came to the committee with their plan, and the committee thought that it was a good plan for that location, so they adopted a redevelopment plan for that location. to allow that particular use, adjust the bulk standards to allow for that project to go forward. Committee introduces the ordinance that is drafted in consultation with the planning board planner and the engineer. It goes to the planning board for them to review, to make a determination as to whether or not it's consistent with the township master plan. Once that review is done, it comes back to mayor and committee, and they vote on it and adopt it as an ordinance if they find that it is appropriate to do so. That site plan application then goes to the planning board rather than the zoning board, but it must go to that board pursuant to the municipal land use law. It is not circumvented. It still goes to that board. They must present their engineer, their traffic engineer, their landscape architect. There is still a public hearing, there are still 200-foot notices, there are still newspaper notices. The plan still must be on file 10 days ahead of the hearing. People have an opportunity to be heard, present contrary evidence. A hearing is still held. It is not circumvented.
Why does it have to come under redevelopment?
Why does it have to?
Why? Why doesn't it just, we've been doing this for years, going before the planning board. If they have a piece of land, they go for the planning board, and they...
A decision is made by the entire committee that they feel as though the process of redevelopment and the benefits of redevelopment make the project more feasible, and it is beneficial to the township. There are a lot of things that go into your decision. It's not my decision. It's your decision as a committee as to whether or not you want to move forward through redevelopment, or whether or not you would like that applicant to go to the zoning board, because they feel as though the zoning board is a more appropriate place for it.
But to go back to redevelopment, the CarMax doesn't need redevelopment there? Is there a building that needs to be torn down and redone?
So the area was,
Development.
Because that parcel sat vacant for 40 years. That's the reason. That they could not attract development to that parcel. That's why the redevelopment agreement was struck up on that parcel, so that the developer and the township could come to a agreement of what could possibly be built there and whether it worked for both of them. And that's why redevelopment and rehabilitation works. It attracts development. We are competing with every other township. Egg Harbor Township wants those same businesses that we're trying to get. Galloway Township wants those same businesses that we're trying to get. Rehabilitation, Mr. Shanker, Mayor, I applaud you for your work on this. You and I worked very hard together on this to bring this to Hamilton Township because of the economic benefits to it. Now, that's why, and I've said this from this dais repeatedly, you have multiple bites at this apple. That process took almost, I think CarMax took 2 years. And public had the input for it. We're going to see that economic development happen here in this township. They could have went anywhere. We attracted them here, we attracted them to that parcel. So you have to let these things take their course. It is a great thing for our township to have rehabilitation, redevelopment, to use in our toolbox to work with developers to develop parcels of property.
I do have one question. Now, I do not want to...
Sorry. Was it appropriate?
I couldn't hear you. Now,
Oh, my gosh.
Go ahead, Mr. Strike.
CarMax was mentioned, okay? Used cars is not a permitted use
Correct.
in Hamilton Township.
That is
okay?
correct.
That's the rule. I mean, whether you like it or not, that's the rule. Who grants that use variance? That is specific under municipal land use law. That is a zoning board decision to grant a use variance. Not necessarily, you talk about building height, okay, the zoning, that's a bulk variance. Zoning board will hear that. But here's a specific one. And tonight, this is going into executive session. I don't know what the context of the executive session is, but it's not.
Shoot. Sorry. I can't get, they want to keep on calling me. I can't get it to mute. Okay, hold on.
But you know my point.
Yes.
Okay, and I understand trying to attract businesses to, but what happens is, we're not used to this new system. I'm not so sure I really understand all this, and then all of a sudden, there's a piece of vacant property, and then all of a sudden, there's a use going into a residential area, and I don't blame people for being upset, okay? There's two sides to this, but it seems to all of a sudden come out of nowhere. It's been in executive sessions, and it's not very well advertised, from what I can see. So
Bruce,
the old
can I-
system worked really well.
I got to bring this up if you don't mind.
Yes.
Please. 10 years ago, I believe that you and I worked together.
That's true.
We tried to, and I want the public to know this, we tried to get notification on properties when a use would be changed.
Right.
We wanted advance notification for who?
The public.
The public, correct?
With,
Because
if you
we wanted to
remember,
make
a
sure.
4x4 sign.
Yes, we wanted to do it with a.
This property
That is
is
correct.
under consideration for a use variance. We did work on that.
And the reason why we wanted that, so that no member of the public in any neighborhood gets blindsided by a use change. We tried to do that. We were shot down because in New Jersey, it is not legal to do that. It is legal in Florida. In Florida, they have them everywhere. And that's why we wanted to make sure that the public doesn't get blindsided. We want to make sure that that process is open and transparent,
Right.
because some people support a project, some people don't. That happens in everything.
And that's why you have boards and committees, you have odd numbers of people, and the vote is
Correct.
taken, and the majority rules, and it's said and done. My transparency, I think, is the key to this whole thing. And I don't know, I hope you understand, where I'm coming from, but it's the D variance that I don't think is being properly addressed with the transparency.
I'm sure the committee will take it under advisement. Bruce, thank you. All right, moving on, we're going to move on to D, telework policy. Ms. Hopkins?
Okay, hold on.
Let's see this.
It was actually just a quick dialogue that I wanted to have with the administrator.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Emily, thank you.
So I'm going back to, and you were here, during COVID, it hit a lot of businesses and it hit the township. And there was times when our people worked from home. There were times when we paid them to stay home and do nothing because we wanted to protect the safety of everybody. And now we're out of COVID, if you will, we're kind of going back into it again. And I understand from talking to some of the IT folks that we are set up so that if COVID were to hit us really hard, we could send everybody home to work that could work from home, that could VPN in. And from what I understand, they have their laptops, they have VPN, and they're ready to go. The one piece that we're missing is the policy. And I wanted to ask you if we could craft that policy. It makes me very nervous when we have a change in protocol and we have no protection for the township. If someone is teleworking from home because someone gave them permission, it introduces an inconsistency, and then someone else says, I can't telework, how come they can telework? We need a blanket policy put out. I also understand that the state has embraced a hybrid policy. Could we, I don't know whether you all formulate a committee and put something together to present to committee here, but could we, between now and December 21st, get some kind of telework agreement in place? I just want the township protected. We're already doing it when we need to. I think we open other doors later on, but I think we need that document. I think we need that policy.
I can work on it, no problem. Yes.
Okay, that was all I had.
The problem with what you're suggesting is that everyone that is in our staff would have the ability to telework a policy. And that policy would have to apply to everyone and not just certain people. So that is something that has to go over in great depth. And right now, according to our, standards, we do not do teleworking. So that's it.
Judy, I hear you, and I agree with you. Let's take a hypothetical. Someone, we have a COVID or an outbreak incident, or someone is granted permission to work from home. And they've got their computer setting up at their kitchen table and they're working away. They don't see the cord, they trip over the cord. They break their leg. They go to the hospital, they want to have their leg fixed and they want medical insurance to cover it. And the question is, well, were you working? Well, yeah, I was working from home. We have no workman's comp that'll cover it. We have no insurance. The town's at liability. This policy just protects them from the one-offs that work from home. It's an insurance policy that protects the township. It doesn't state, Johnny, you can work from home on Tuesday and Friday from 3 to 5. It's more of a policy that says, hey, if you're going to work from home, you know, make sure your computer's on, make sure you're not having cords going across the table. It gives them guidance, and it protects us. And for that reason, if we are in a scenario, as most businesses are, we've been encouraged to put it into your policy. You're not advocating, you're not saying, hey, now you've got a policy, you can go telework. But those one-offs where they've got sick children at home or they need it, we want to make sure the township's protected.
Forward thinking. Thank you, Ms. Hopkins. Yes. Any other questions or comments, Ms. Hopkins? So I guess we'll get something to work, or a working draft on something. You're right on. Thank you. All right, moving on. We're going to move on to 3, discussions, formal actions made, 4, public hearing, adoption of ordinances. A, ordinance 2017-2022. This is an ordinance to vacate the following public street situated in the Township of Hamilton, County of Atlantic, State of New Jersey, and to release and relinquish the public rights therein, Massachusetts Avenue, and repealing all ordinances heretofore adopted, the provisions of which are inconsistent herein. Joe?
Yes, sir. This is a public hearing. This is for Massachusetts Avenue. This has been presented the last meeting of introduction. This is the second reading, and it was on the previous 2 meetings to be introduced as an ordinance.
All right, this is a public hearing. Is there anyone in the public that wishes to speak on this? Seeing none? Committee, what's your pleasure?
So move closing the public hearing.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Committee?
A motion?
Second?
I have a motion and a second. Rita, can we get a roll call, please?
Mr. Cheek?
Yes.
Ms. Hopkins?
Yes.
Mrs. Link?
Yes.
Mr. Patali?
Yes.
Mayor Kane?
Yes.
All yes and adopted.
All right, 4B, ordinance 2018-2022. This is an ordinance to vacate the following alleyway situate in the Township of Hamilton, County of Atlantic, and State of New Jersey, and to release and relinquish the public rights therein, the 15-foot alleyway between 12th and 13th Street in Block 780 on the tax map of Township of Hamilton, repealing all ordinance heretofore adopted, the provisions of which are inconsistent herein. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone in the public that wishes to speak on this ordinance? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to close the public portion.
So moved.
I have a motion.
Second?
Second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it.
Mr. Mayor.
It says here, respectfully request that the ordinance 2018-22 be defeated or the public hearing therein be deferred. There was an error in the, that met some bounds.
Mr.
You
Solicitor.
need a motion in the affirmative, a second in the affirmative, and at least 3 votes against to do what Judy's saying, to defeat it.
So we have to
There
turn
is
it
in
down.
fact a defect.
There is a defect.
Yeah.
So just to be clear, you want us to motion in the affirmative,
3 votes to turn it down.
3 votes turned down, okay.
So then we have to start all over again.
Well, no,
I mean,
you just closed the public portion, so if someone will make a motion to affirm it,
I'll motion to adopt.
second.
I have a motion and a second.
Who was the second? I'm sorry.
Sue.
Thank you.
Now you'll need a roll call.
Yep.
Rita?
Mr. Cheek?
No.
Ms. Hopkins?
No.
Mrs. Link?
No.
Mr. Patali?
No.
Mayor Kane?
No.
The ordinance is defeated, and yes, the applicant will submit when they get the correct meets and bounds, and we'll introduce again next year.
Thank you, Ms. Martina. Okay, we'll move on to ordinance 2019-2022, an ordinance to vacate portion of Columbia Avenue described by meets and bounds and located in the Township of Hamilton, County of Atlantic, and State of New Jersey. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone in the public that wishes to speak? Sir, please come up to the microphone, state your name and address for the record, please.
Thank you, sir. My name is Richard King. I'm an attorney at King Barnes. I represent Joseph Kowalski and Giovanni Villalpasqua. They own block 861, lot 1.02, 2.07, 34. I do have a little map here, if I can distribute it as an exhibit, to help you orient you to the lot so you understand what I'm about to say.
What was that block number again, please?
Yes, ma'am.
What was that block number?
Block 861.
Sir.
Okay, thank you. The issue before us is, this was in court briefly before, and then the ordinance that vacated it was undone, and now it's been reintroduced. I have with me Rami Nasa, who is an engineer, maybe familiar to you, and he was working on this project with my clients. So with reference to the map, I did try to email this to Martino a few minutes ago, so he had a fancy screen up there, so we did it up there.
Speak up a little bit, please, I can't hear you.
Yes, sir.
Speak up, please.
I will. Thank you.
Rich, I'll give you the mic, guys.
Okay. Well, okay. Sounded loud to me, but I guess it wasn't. So there is a road that is yellow running perpendicular on a piece of paper, running from the bottom to the top. That one is Pine Street. That is an actual paved road. The thing that's in pink here is the road that you intend or are considering vacating. Yellow is one of our lots, 1.02. And the problem is this, and Rami is going to get into the details from an engineering perspective. I just want to introduce the problem. Is that if you vacate the pink part, our lot can't get to a paved road. And that's very bad for us. And that's why we're asking not to vacate it. We would have to consider our property to be basically sent into inutility. And I've sent a case to your solicitor that talks about that really it's sort of like taking the property. And I'd ask you to not do that. I don't think it would be good for anyone involved. We're not insensitive to the concerns of the neighbors who had spoken here previously. So Mr. Nasser is going to explain to you why another road, you'll see over a road called Birch, why that really isn't a viable option for us, and Ms. Nasser will speak to that. And he'll also talk for a bit about what we envision for that road, so to speak. So if I could introduce Mr. Nassar, and briefly he'll give his qualifications for those of you who aren't familiar with him, if that's okay. And then he's going to speak for a minute on some engineering issues.
Does anyone need qualifications for Mr. Nasser, or do we accept him as a professional?
Yes.
We're good with that? Mr. Nasser, you don't have to qualify yourself.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I'll be brief. If you look at the map Mr. King provided you, the bottom of the map, there's a street called Trenton Avenue. That's on Open Street. Then to the left side of the map, that's Birch, also it's on Open. So to get an access to the property, you have to wait. Either you come down to improve Birch and Trenton to get to Pine, or you improve about 850-foot road along Columbia to get to the property. The issue with Birch and Trenton, you have sensitive areas with wetlands buffers. We cannot improve the road. We'll be going through wetlands and finance.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to need to be asking you some questions.
Yes, sir.
Swear you in, please. Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Certainty.
Yes, sir. So the way to, if we take away that portion of Columbia, we won't be able to access the property. That's the bottom line. So we are looking at improving portion of Columbia, thought was, when they had discussion with the owners of the properties, maybe we should not be doing pavement, tar road as pavement, just to service one house, maybe we'll go in, but we have in different areas in this portion of town, that we have gravel roads that they can get to the house, and that will be only for single family houses. That's what we envision for that improvement of that portion of the right.
Mr. Nestor, that's a separate process, and you will be submitting applications for that, so that analysis can be done by the code authorities.
Yes, we have to deal with the finance, and we have to come in front of the zoning board to get the variance that allow us to do this.
Need a road plan.
Yes, sir.
Yeah?
Absolutely, Mr. Simmons.
On the area which is Birch Avenue,
Yes.
are there pockets of wetlands?
Yes.
And in your opinion, first of all, have you been to the site?
Yes.
Familiar with the site?
Yes, sir. And I looked at the area, I looked at the wetlands not provided by the state.
So you're able to document the existence of wetlands on Birch Avenue?
Yes. Or even wetlands and wetlands buffer zone portion of it also. It's both.
Now, it's a fact that your client purchased the property with knowledge that Columbia was a paper street and Birch was not passable. True?
I'm not sure, I know he knows both are papers. I'm not sure if,
I don't know that he knew that Birch wasn't passable, but he did know that Columbia was a paper street. That's not so. I can ask him to here, and I'll ask him.
No. So, right now, is the portion of Columbia wooded?
yes, it has some cleared path that it's wooded, yes. It has like cleared areas, like this.
And is it your professional opinion that you have some basis to acquire rights in that portion of Columbia on behalf?
It's a right, it's a public right of way.
Yeah.
The public right of way, and we can come to the town and we can improve. The reason for public right of ways is to install roads to service other lots. That's my understanding.
I know of no body of law that says you can compel the township to build a roadway.
We are going to build the road, not the township's going to build.
We need our permission. We own it.
Right. Yes, correct.
That's all I have, Rich.
Mr. Salmon, just one question. If they're going to build, does it have to be a road built to the standards of the township? Because I heard the word gravel mentioned, and I just want to know for my decision purposes.
Gravel is birch.
Okay. So we are going to, we're going to fully improve Columbia, is that what we're talking about, or is that going to be a gravel drive through there?
It's either we're going to get a variance from the zoning board, or we have to improve to the township standards. At this point, we have to come from the zoning board, and we have to have a formal action by the township to allow either the gravel road if they feel that makes sense, or we have to improve it to the township standards.
I see something, sir. We're not asking the board tonight to approve us doing gravel or doing a full road. We're not doing any of that. All we're doing is asking you not to vacate it, which would therefore preclude us from even pursuing it. So that's the problem, is if you vacate it, it denies us the opportunity to make those requests, to do that engineering, to find solutions with our neighbors that are satisfactory to them. Yes, then we heard they mentioned drainage, and we're willing to figure that out. In fact, the gravel, I think, was partially a reaction to those concerns. But if you vacate it, it leaves us in a position where not only is the wetlands an issue, but it's also over 4,000 feet as opposed to 800 feet. And to us, it makes it really impossible to use our land for any purpose, and it is permitted to do something on it. So we're just asking you not to vacate it, and we'll deal with the road and go through the appropriate processes for that with Pinelands and with your township before anything's done. And everyone will have input. The neighbors will have input. We'll have notice of that application, and the zoning board would deal with that. So so that's all we're asking. So I don't want you to get the impression we're trying to sneak a road in tonight. We just don't want you to.
I understand that. That wasn't what I was implying. What I wanted to know if that would be acceptable, if a gravel road to the property would be acceptable. That's the only, I was just trying to clarify. Thank you.
It would not.
That's right.
And it would require drainage calculations and Pinelands approval. But having said all that, it is my opinion, and it's up to you, of course, it's your decision, that to traverse 4,200 feet is impracticable, It is my opinion, based on my knowledge of land use and pine lands, that the existence of wetlands on the roadway known as Birch Street presents probably an insurmountable hurdle. And that would mean that that street is not a reasonably reliable source of access to the site. Council has supplied me with a copy of an opinion as a courtesy to describe what he considers to be an inverse condemnation possibility. And if that were the case, we would be zoning this property out of existence for use. Not zoning it, we would be legally stopping it. So it is my opinion that you should make a motion to approve the ordinance, second it, and it should be defeated.
Bob, can I just ask you, when you look down the maps, both maps that were provided to us, and you look down to lot 10, 11, and 12, let's take 11 in particular. That is kind of the same situation with no public, no paper street going to it. I mean, how would those individuals have that access? I mean,
I don't know what the street is at the bottom of the map. What is it, Trent? Is it improved?
And a lot of the frontage on Pine.
It presents the same issue.
That's
I mean, I just see we have an application before us now, and we have possibly, maybe in the future, an application coming. That's what I'm looking at this evening. So I'm looking for you to advise us.
We have probably 6 future applications.
Okay. I move the ordinance 2019-2022.
I have a question.
There's questions.
For the yellow lots, the 4 lots, they're looking to vacate Columbia up to their boundary line, correct?
Boundary line of Lot 102.
Lot 102. How would they access 207, 3, and 4?
Yes.
Well, that's another.
The access would be across 102 to the other lots.
Very common ownership, sir. We own all 4 of those, so they would all access onto that road that you're making, that you're considering.
The zoning board probably would require a merger.
Yeah, that'd be a whole different thing.
Mr. King, if you could come up to the microphone, please,
That
sir.
would be a different process. But the answer to the question was, those properties, they're common ownerships, so everything would have access across 1.02 unless another plan was approved by some appropriate board.
And they're owned by, each lot is owned by the same people.
The 4 lots, 1.02, 2.07, 3, and 4 are owned by my clients, Joseph Kowalski and Joey Lyon.
But both your clients own all of them, not one and the other, and they own all 4 in the same
They
name,
jointly own each property, yes.
in the same name.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
All right, this is a public hearing. Is there anyone else in the public that wishes to speak? Sir, if you would just state your name and address for the record, please.
Michael Lucas, 6320 Pine Street. Now, there's also 3 other properties, like you said, back there. If you go through them, they don't get access. Correct? If you go through their properties that access their own properties, you do not give access to the other 3 properties that are back there.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Birch Street that's back there.
Right.
If they're going through their own property back there, you're not giving them access to their own properties. Also.
Which lots are you referring to?
I am talking about I know, but you're not giving access to these other properties, which is not fair to them either.
Well, they're not here before us.
I get that, and that's my other point too. Now, we have New Jersey state is not here also. They're the other property owner that's back there. Now, if they're not here to contest this, that means that over 51% of the people that live on the street are vacating this road. So it's been it's been a farce for, I don't know what it's called, but I mean, that street has been there for over 40 years. That's not.
Would you agree with me, sir, that the portion of Columbia Avenue which is sought to be vacated is wooded?
It's wooded. There is.
You're asserting the rights of someone who's not here.
They had their chance to come here and say.
That's right, they did.
That they defined this.
And they still have that right, and they still have that chance.
I just wanted to make sure that that's said.
Nothing that's happening here tonight will affect the rights of somebody else who owns property on Birch.
Right, and that's the other thing, is it's not on Columbia. Their frontage is on Birch.
I understand.
I mean, does that make any difference at all, because it's not on Columbia?
No.
Their frontage is Birch, not Columbia. Their address is Birch.
Their property abuts
It
Columbia.
does. Frontage is frontage. You need frontage for any property, not.
I don't want to be.
Columbia-
We do front on Columbia, I don't want to believe that anything else, I just want to say we're on Columbia, that's all we're here for.
Which is on Birch.
Well, Lot 102 fronts on Columbia, too.
They're all owned by the same
And it
owner.
also creates, like you said, I mean, drainage is a huge problem. I'm the lowest property that's there, by far. My well is 20 to 30 feet deep, that's it. Now, you're gonna take that water and you're gonna just magically disappear a whole acre of water.
So we have engaged one of the most knowledgeable drainage people in the township to help us design the road as a way to minimize.
What happens when it doesn't?
It has to be constructed to municipal standards, which means drainage, a drainage plan has to be in place.
Also, there is a shed that's probably within 25 feet of it that has to be moved.
Doesn't change a thing.
And then, whose property does that become if it does get paved? It becomes theirs?
If it does not get paved,
Does not get paved and/or does get paved or?
if the property is not vacated, it maintains by the township, they own it, subject to the greater right of the public to use it if and when the township decides to develop it.
And what about utilities?
Whole other story.
Traffic too. I mean, there's a bunch of.
All of that's going to be taken care of by a planning, zoning, or some board, not this one.
I mean, I know that mine already floods, so I don't know where you put it. That's my point. My backyard floods. If you take any, if I get a 10 acre, that's a huge bit of amount.
You have every right to attend the planning, zoning, or other meetings. And if you have concerns about water trespassing on your property,
Yes, so they have been trespassing on our properties too. They have no regard for their neighbors. They took their quads, went on to my neighbor Jim's property over there, disregard. And they, they have no regard for our citizens. This is not just, it's a real issue. They really, and it shouldn't come down to that, but like I said, it's been parks for how long? When's there a presence of not being on Village Road? Since it's been there for that long. There is, I know that there's been ones in Supreme Court. As long as 51% of people approve it, that they say no to it, it's been done in Pennsylvania. I don't have the docket number, but it's not.
not aware of it.
Sir, any more questions, comments? If not, is there anyone else in the public that wishes to speak on this matter? Sir?
Right after you go on, Barry Lancer, I'm
Walker, to the Sixth County Court. I don't know if this is relevant to specifically this thing, forgive me, but.
What is your
it's
name,
just
sir?
General,
Your name?
Harry Glasser. Okay, just, and this may be more questions. It seems to me from when I observed coming here, that the majority of citizens clearly don't want, 280 acres.
We're not, sir, we're not on that. We're on a specific application regarding a street vacation in Lauradale.
So,
I'm on the wrong topic.
No problem. There's a public comment at the end, Mr. Glasser.
Okay.
All right? I'll entertain a motion to close the public portion, please. Motion?
second.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, committee, what's your pleasure? You've heard the advice of our solicitor. You've heard the testimony. What's your pleasure?
You have to move it.
If that's what you'd like to do.
Well, you have to move it and then debate it.
If that's, you're moving an affirmative motion?
Well, yeah, if that's the procedure to introduce it, say ordinance 2019-20, introduce that and someone second it.
Are you making a motion? Yes.
I'm making a motion.
Ms. Link has made a motion. Is there a second? I have a second by Ms. Hopkins. Rita, could we get a roll call, please?
Yes. Mr. Cheek?
Yes.
Ms. Hopkins?
Yes.
Mrs. Link?
No.
Mr. Patali?
No.
Mayor Kane?
I have to look at the situation that tonight we have an application before us, and then we have a proposed application that may come up. So I'm going to vote yes.
3 yes, 2 no. The ordinance passes.
All right, we'll move on to 5, introduction of ordinance, public hearing to be held December 19, 2022. We have 5A, ordinance.
I just want to clarify, you did vote to vacate the street?
Yes.
Yes, they did.
I didn't get to hear the motion, was yes or no? Thank you.
Right, thank you. All right, we have ordinance 2022, I'm sorry, the public hearing on this will be held December 19th, 2022. Ordinance 2020-2022. This is an ordinance authorizing the sale of Lot 74 and Block 319 as shown on the tax map of the Township of Hamilton, granting to the owner or owners of said real property contiguous to the same the right to prior refusal to purchase such land in the Township of Hamilton, County of Atlantic, State of New Jersey.
I have a question.
Sure.
Could you say that ordinance number one more time?
2020-2022. Committee? Questions, comments?
Motion?
I have a motion by Mr. Cheek,
Second.
second by Ms. Hopkins. Rita?
Mr. Cheek?
Yes.
Ms. Hopkins?
Yes.
Mrs. Link?
No.
Mr. Patali?
Yes.
Mayor Kane?
Yes.
4 yes.
We'll
1
move
no.
on to B, ordinance 2021-2022. This is an ordinance authorizing the sale of lots 26, 27, 28, 29, 51, 52, 53, 54 in Block 319 as shown on the tax map of the Township of Hamilton, granting to the owner or owners of said real contiguous property the same the right to prior refusal to purchase such land in the Township of Hamilton, County of Atlantic, and State of New Jersey. Committee, questions, comments? Motion?
So moved.
I have a motion by Ms. Link.
Second.
Second by Ms. Hopkins. Ms. Martinez, can we get a roll call, please?
Mr. Cheek?
Yes.
Ms. Hopkins?
Yes.
Mrs. Link?
Yes.
Mr. Patali?
Yes.
Mayor Kane?
Yes.
All yes and introduced.
All right, we have C, ordinance 2022. 2023.
2023.
22.
No, we had 2021-2022. This is 2022-2022.
Just say that again.
Okay? So we have ordinance 2022-2022, an ordinance amending Exhibit B, Section 1, Article 2 of Chapter 66 of the Code of the Township of Hamilton, providing for the maximum number of its employees, Public Works. Joe, you want to give us a little bit on this, please?
Absolutely, Mayor. What this does is actually this amends the staffing chart to delete two truck driver laborers and adds 2 equipment operators at the need of Public Works.
Thank you. Committee,
Not
questions,
change the head
comments?
The only question I have is, Brett, is this what you wanted? Okay, good, then I'm good with it.
Is that a motion?
Yeah, I'll motion.
That's a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Second? Need a roll call, please.
Mr. Cheek?
Yes.
Ms. Hopkins?
Yes.
Mrs. Link?
Yes.
Mr. Vitale?
Yes.
Mayor Kane?
Yes.
All yes and introduced.
All right, we'll move on to D, ordinance 2023-2022. This is an ordinance to amend ordinance 1989-2022 entitled an ordinance to amend ordinance 1963-2021 entitled Ordinance of the Township of Hamilton adopting an amendment to the redevelopment plan for the entirety of the Township of Hamilton, County of Atlantic, State of New Jersey to permit cannabis establishments, distributors, and delivery services. Joe, can we
Yes, sir.
say why this is on here?
Yes, so when ordinance 1989-2022 was transmitted to the Pinelands Commission after adoption, there was an oversight on their part regarding the highway commercial zone, and the Pinelands Commission has asked that we amend 1989-2022 to include additional language HC zone. So it's a minor amendment.
Housekeeping, essentially.
Yes.
Committee, questions, comments, or I'll entertain a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Vitale,
Second.
second by Mr. Cheek. Rita, could I get a roll call, please?
Mr. Cheek?
Yes.
Ms. Hopkins? Mrs. Link? I'm sorry, Ms. Hopkins, did you say pass? Mrs. Link?
No.
Mr. Vitale?
Yes.
Mayor Kane?
Yes.
Ms. Hopkins?
Yes.
4 yes, 1 no.
We will move on to 6, award of bids, contracts / change orders. This is a resolution rescinding Resolution 2022-0288, a resolution authorizing the award of a contract for consolidation of volunteer services, fire services to the Township of Hamilton to Richard M. Braslow, Esquire. Ready? Questions, comments? Motion, please.
So moved.
Motion, Mr.
Second.
Vitale. Second, Mrs. Link. Need a roll call, please.
Mr. Cheek?
Yes.
Ms. Hopkins?
Yes.
Mrs. Link?
Yes.
Mr. Vitale?
Yes.
Mayor Kane?
Yes.
All yes and carried.
Next, we move on to B, resolution awarding professional contract to Keith B. Kemery, Esquire, for consolidation of the Township Volunteer Fire Services. The amount is not to exceed $17,399.
So moved.
I have a motion by Mrs. Link,
Second.
second by Mr. Cheek. Rita, please.
Mr. Cheek?
Yes.
Ms. Hopkins?
Yes.
Mrs. Link?
Yes.
Mr. Vitale?
Yes.
Mayor Kane?
Yes.
All yes and carried.
And this is a first. I've never seen this. We will move on to the consent agenda, items A through X. Committee? Anybody want anything pulled?
Pull G.
G, okay.
And V.
G. Anyone else?
M through S.
N as in Nancy?
M
as in Mary?
Mary through S and W.
Through S and W. Okay, I'm going to rephrase that. I'm going to ask for a motion for A through F, H through L, T and U, and X, please.
So moved.
I have a motion.
Second.
I have a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. All right. Sue, Ms. Hopkins, you had G, please.
In the, who's that part of the, page 1, item B, it's given in the working hours of the PAL between 8 a.m. and midnight, 7 days a week. But there's a lot of times when no one's in that building, and I'm looking for facilities where we can do something with our seniors. So I'm wondering if we could maybe carve out Thursdays from 3:30 to 4:30 to give to seniors for 1 year, to see if they use it. I'm just asking for a block of time that's convenient for the seniors out of this entire 24/7 schedule. If we could just let them play bingo or do an activity. Is that?
Mr. Sanders, can we do that on the fly? Is that, okay, thank you.
We could do it?
Well, hold on.
Not play bingo.
Just trying to get something for the
Something else
seniors. I
that's
know.
legal.
I know.
Thank you.
Bob, is there anything that you want to add to her comments, or? Ms. Hopkins, I think it's a great idea.
I'm just trying to get a little bit eaten out, Chief. You look concerned. Are we okay with it?
I just had,
You're old now. Come on, dude. This is us.
I don't see a problem with it. I'm kind of blindsided because I would have liked to spoke to the director of the pound, because ultimately we have a board that we have to discuss things with. I don't see it being a problem, but it's something that we should, in all honesty.
And we're willing to negotiate too. We're just looking for some time for an hour a week that we could take the seniors to, that they could count on all year, 24/7. And if it works, we'd like it next year. And if it doesn't, we'll bow out gracefully.
That's fine. Let me bring it back to our board, the pound board, and discuss it. I'll call you tomorrow.
We'll bake cookies. We'll bake cookies. We're good. Thank you. So how do we?
Can we wait until,
Well, no, she can just, we're going to move on. G first. Does that answer your question? Is that enough information with the chief getting back to you?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, so if that's it, is there any other questions or comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion to move G forward with the understanding that the chief is going to talk to the PAL board to try to block out time as per Ms. Hopkins' request.
that should also be in consideration to the seniors, because 3:30 to 4:30 is a very busy traffic time.
What I would suggest, Mrs. Link, I agree with you. I would suggest that can we move to table this evening?
Yes.
And allow the chief to have his conversation and bring it back for the next meeting for consideration with specific times and, does that work for you?
I think that would be good.
So with that being said, I'll entertain a motion to table G, please.
Yep. Judy, just for point of reference, we had a list of activities of yoga instructors and stuff like that that could come between 3:30 and 4 on
Okay,
Thursday, so we had pre-planned
All
that.
right.
So I have a motion by Ms. Hopkins. I'm going to assume a second by Mrs. Link. For tabling it.
Tabling it.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? Ayes have it. All right, we'll move on to Mr. Vitale. You asked to remove, to break out M through S, please.
Yeah, I just want to, Joe's not here, so I'm going to pick on poor Steve here. It was just a few months ago, people from Artiste Walk were here complaining, trying to get things straightened out. I know we got the roads paved. I think one of the issues that I don't think a lot of the homeowners understood was they were going to have to create a HOA. Who is in charge of making sure that all that happens?
The original developer, Randy Ungst, is involved with Paparone. They're responsible for creating a homeowners association.
Okay, because, I mean, we're approving some stuff here, and I just don't want to end up with them being on the hook for some things, and then,
Okay.
are you following what I'm saying?
I'm following what you're saying. There's 7 line items here, 5 of which we're approving, 2 of which we're not approving or making a recommendation because of drainage issues. I will take this back to Joe, and I'll report back to the committee where the developer stands on the homeowners association. And I will report back to everybody.
Okay, because I'm fine with everything, I just want to make sure everybody,
You don't want this to fall into a crack, and
Right.
I think it's a great idea that you brought this up. And I will follow up.
okay, thank you.
What's your pleasure,
So-
Mr. Vitale?
I make a motion to move
M through S?
M through S.
I have a motion by Mr. Vitale.
I have a
Second.
question.
Sure, go ahead, please.
Would we be better off tabling this until we get the response? Or not?
I don't see a harm in it. I mean, I think that
You have 2 items that'll cover that?
Yeah, I don't know the
Performance
timeline.
guarantee, there's a 45-day period of time, and if we make a recommendation, if we put it off, we might be outside that 45 days.
Okay.
I'll make sure that we follow up.
Well then,
we have all confidence in you, Mr.
want a motion?
You did.
Yeah.
Second.
I have a second by Mr. Cheek. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Ayes have it. Mrs. Link, you have B.
Yes, I just wanted to have an explanation by our CFO about it.
B.
V.
Our capital fund is delinquent of cash, well, insufficient cash to move forward to pay any more of the improvements that have been authorized and committed. So this note is a self-funding by the township. Because the township has plenty of liquid cash in its current fund, the idea behind this is for the current fund to lend the capital fund cash to pay for those improvements that have been previously authorized. And in doing so, this would not cause any cost of issuances as normally would be charged to the township for bond counsel, for financial advisors, for interest that would be due and owing in next year's budget. Financially, it's a good fiscal, responsible way of lending one fund to another fund to save the cost of all those issuances.
Okay.
Does that answer your questions?
Yes, it does.
Any other committee member have a question? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
I have a motion by Mrs. Link,
Second.
second by Ms. Hopkins. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. All right, we have W. Mr. Talley?
This is for public right-of-way for Planet Networks. They are installing various, I guess, phone and/or internet cable. I know before, previous times where, I can't remember exactly who it was, but we are able to charge them a fee to do this because it is going to kind of create some work for us, I would assume. Have we looked into that, into charging them a fee for this?
Yeah, they didn't want to pay a fee.
Or is that just something that you can do, but we don't?
If you look at the detail that was given to us, Mr. Patali, page 3, 1, 2, 3, 4 paragraphs down, what the municipality may not impose a tax on these facilities, but is entitled to recover the reasonable cost of actual services that it incurs in reviewing and approving Planet Network's request. And then I am going to bore you with the relevant statute, but it says that we were or are able to recover costs for reviewing and approving it. I don't know if we've had any cost for that. Does anyone know if we have costs incurred? And if we have we asked for them to be reimbursed? So approving this tonight, we move forward, and then there'll be an agreement that the Township Committee will look at and approve.
Any and all out-of-pocket expenses related to it.
Does that make everyone comfortable? If it does, I'll entertain a motion. Motion by Mr. Patali.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Link. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. All right, we'll move on to 8, personnel. A resolution promoting Sergeant Michael Schnurr to the rank of lieutenant at a salary of $127,609. This is to be effective 1/4/23.
Motion.
I have a motion by Mr. Cheek.
Second.
Second by Mr. Kelly. Rita, roll call, please.
Mr. Cheek?
Yes.
Ms. Hopkins?
Yes.
Ms. Blank?
Yes.
Mr. Talley?
Yes.
Mayor King?
Yes. All right, we have B, resolution promoting Detective Michael Tanham to the rank of sergeant at a salary of $117,530. This is also effective 1/4/23.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Talley.
Second.
Second by Mr. Cheek. Rita, roll call, please.
Mr. Cheek?
Yes.
Ms. Hopkins?
Yes.
Mrs. Link?
Yes.
Mr. Patali?
Congratulations, Mike and Mike, yes.
Mayor King?
There were, with both positions, there were a tremendous amount of qualified applicants. All I can say is Hamilton Township is in really good hands. The decision was extremely difficult, and I believe the right people were promoted to the position, so I congratulate them both. All right, I vote yes. Resolution appointing Maurice Matthews as a full-time police officer for the Hamilton Township Police Department at a salary of $47,937.51. Start date to be determined because it's contingent upon successful completion of the background process.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Vitale,
Second?
second by Mrs. Link. Read a roll call, please.
Mr. Cheek?
Yes.
Ms. Hopkins?
Yes.
Mrs. Link?
Yes.
Mr. Vitale?
Congratulations, yes.
Mayor Kane?
Once again, the quality of the applicants we sat through, fortunately, we're blessed in the current society we're dealing with. We're blessed that we had applicants and qualified applicants like this. I was very impressed, and I wish Maurice a lot of luck in his new position. I vote yes.
All yes and carried.
All right, we'll move to D, resolution authorizing additional on-call responder compensation for James Jensen in the amount of $75.50 per pay period, not to exceed 13 pay periods effective 11/28/2022. Anybody need to detail this? Are we good? If not, if there's no questions or comments, I'll entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Link,
Second.
second by Ms. Hopkins. Read a roll call, please.
Mr. Cheek?
Yep.
Ms. Hopkins?
Yes.
Mrs. Link?
Yes.
Mr. Vitale?
Yes.
Mayor Kane?
Yes.
All yes and carried.
Next, we have resolution to appoint Mary Kelly as a part-time temporary Human Services Resource Director, not to exceed 20 hours per week, working remotely at will employment effective 12/6/2022 at an hourly rate of $60 an hour.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Hopkins,
Second.
second by Mr. Cheek. Read it, please.
Mr. Cheek?
Yes.
Ms. Hopkins?
Yes.
Mrs. Link?
Yes.
Vitale?
Yes.
Mayor Kane?
Yes.
All yes and carried.
All right, well, we'll move on to 9, approval of minutes, regular meeting minutes of November 14th, 2022.
So moved.
Motion?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I abstain.
4 yes, 1 abstention, motion carries.
We'll move on to B, bill list. Bills total $803,867.44.
Motion.
Motion?
Second.
Second. Read a roll call, please.
Mr. Cheek?
Yes.
Ms. Hopkins?
Yes.
Mrs. Link?
Yes.
Mr. Vitale?
Yes.
Mayor Kane?
Yes.
All yes and carried.
We will move on to reports. Mr. Administrator.
Thank you, Mayor. The township is preparing for storm season. As such, the township is coordinating with IT, PD, and Public Works for the chain of command notifications, and we'll switch to email notifications for emails regarding any notifications of hours operation concerning inclement weather. The township is finalizing fire consolidation consultants at tonight's meeting, received application for the position of fire administrator, and we will start interviewing immediately with consultants. In addition, we'll keep the fire chiefs abreast and involved at each meeting for the interviews as well. We're working with newly elected officials for transition and reorganization, and the township will be focusing on innovative research initiatives with businesses, schools, and community groups, and the Department of Community Planning and Merchant Association will be playing a larger role in this manner.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Mr. Sandman. All right. Steve?
Nothing to report.
Township Committee. Let's start with Mr. Talley.
Tree lighting went very well, thanks to the Public Department of Public Works. You guys did a great job, as always. Thank you. It was a really nice evening, and thanks to Mays Landing Fire Company for bringing the big guy to town. It's that time of season, it's Christmas, so I just want to remind everybody, when you're out shopping, lock your car, be aware of what's going on, be safe. Situational awareness, just keep that in the back of your mind. Be smart. If you see something, say something. And that's really all. Reagan, hi. Maddie, miss you, love you, hope to see you soon.
Mrs. Link.
I do want to reiterate it was a very successful tree lighting, but a lot of people were anxious because Santa was not there when the lights were lit. And some people were leaving, so Mayor Kane came to our rescue and it told everyone, hold up, Santa's on his way. So everyone was happy about that. There was huge lines to see Santa, And I understand everything went well. There was no problems after that. And I think that's about it. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Ms. Hopkins?
Well, I'm going to piggyback off of Carl. I'd like to thank Sue Guyberson and the Public Works crew, the fire department for transporting Santa, the 4 elves, Jingle Toes, Glitter Balls, Sparky, and Ding-a-Ling. They did an outstanding show. Lisa and Cheryl for getting the cookies and the hot chocolate, and the Public Works for carrying that hot chocolate. That was like 30 gallons of hot chocolate going out. I'd love to thank the Davies School Band and the Hess School Choir, and John Hertz, because he's always there to help us. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Cheek?
I'm going to follow the administrator and assistant solicitor. I wasn't around for the tree lighting. I was out of town, and I have no report.
It was a great job, and I appreciate the opportunity to count it down, so thank you very much. Great job had by all. I have no additional comments. We are going to entertain a motion for a 5-minute break before public comment. We know we got a lot of people that want to speak, so I'll entertain a motion for a 5-minute break.
Motion.
Second.
Second, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Rita, will you give us 5, please? All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. All right, this is a public hearing. Right now, we're on number 11, which is public comment. Is there anyone in the public that wishes to speak? Ms. Fetty, please.
Good evening. I just want to add on to about the tree lighting. Nobody mentioned it, but the HPC is the one who organizes that tree lighting each year. And it's been going on for about 30 years. And I just want you to know, we're proud of what we do. And this year was a phenomenal year. And we had Public Works and you people, everybody, and the public that came. We're very grateful for it. And it is belong to the historical division and the county.
And I believe you've been there all those years, correct?
Thank you.
Yeah, so Mark Clark, Pine Needle Drive. This goes back to last meeting. I want to thank Committee and Vitale for doing his due diligence and speaking up for the taxpayer when he inquired as to the administrator's outside employment and how and if that affects his performance here in our township, what we're paying for. I thought the childish tirade by the administrator was completely unacceptable. I think apologies due to both Committeeman Vitale and the taxpayers of this town, if not more appropriate action. We knew the gentleman had a history of that in the past. We hired him anyway, and we got exactly what was advertised. Thank you.
Appreciate your comments. Thank you. Next. You're in the right time now.
All right, good, okay, so it's questions and some comments, okay. To me, as a, not understanding the political process, but starting to appreciate it, it seems like the majority of people who I talk to in the community, very simple, do not want to see 288 acres of woods developed. Having said that, and following like trends, both in the United States and in the world, there seems to be movements and laws passed for like rewilding and putting more trees up, not taking trees down. We live in the most densely populated state in the United States. Most people are accepting global warming, very simplistically speaking, taking trees down bad, putting trees up good. So my question is, with these, I don't know what it's called, rehabilitation or redevelopment things passed and trying to bring business in, is asking, people who know much more than me about the process, should we start making changes where a project that's trying to be developed for 288 acres, where we put things in place like other countries have, California has, that's not applicable to places where there's trees. We have plenty of land that's, you know, and walls that are dying, the old, of course, the old county racetrack, and areas that are already knocked down, and have things in place where there's like taxes or fines, or just downright change policy, where we take out where there's trees that are in place, and they're just not part on the table as far as development, and then we do something else with that area. I mean, you know, previously, there's been property close to Pomona Woods, which is right there, and I saw that the Department of Environmental Protection has bought up certain lots around Pomona, expanding that. You know, can the township propose to Green Acres or to DEP or the National Land Trust to purchase that land and put up barriers and actually take them off the table of this other process that's going to grow? And that's a question, you know.
There is open space provisions in the state and the county. You could lobby either one of them for any parcel of property. But, you know, listen, in past meetings, and I know you've attended quite a few of them, you know, one of these things with land trust, the problem is there's no funding mechanism to help us keep them clean, help keep them in the pristine condition in which they should be. So sometimes you got to be careful what you wish for, because obviously the lack of development could invite things that you don't want there. But any piece of property can be petitioned to be put into a land trust and or open space with the county that you're in and with the state.
Okay, and, you know, as a citizen, I would like to see the township and the state pass more things to prevent the risks of 280 acres of forest being knocked down for other purposes, and encourage with rehabilitation in other areas where there aren't 280 acres of forest, you know, where you put up more and more barriers to prevent that from happening. I think the world needs that. I think the state needs it. I think half the township needs that. And I think we need to do more to prevent that risk from happening.
I appreciate your comments, Mr. Glasser. Anyone else wish to speak?
Hi, I know I was already up here.
That's
Alice
fine.
Henry with Drosera. Again, I would just like to encourage the committee to please consider tracking developers at the cost of private citizens and weighing those concerns very carefully. I also am concerned because when Ms. Gibbons was speaking, and from everything I've heard from the board, it just seems like we're bypassing utilizing the zoning board appropriately in efforts to promote development. And also, I would like to point out that even during today's meeting, it's been hard to differentiate which areas we're talking about for rezoning versus rehabilitation. And maybe if there was like a clearer map or something that we could easily access to differentiate betwixt the two, to know which rules and which guidelines are applicable to each area. And I also want to continue to advocate potentially for the committee to consider potentially amending or changing the 2018 plan to go and exclude areas that pretty much are just forested new land. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak?
Kevin Graham, Clarkstown Road. Just to follow up on Bill, Mr. Clark said, he's a retired police officer, as am I. Speaking about Mr. Kosecki, his demeanor that day, the way he talked and spoke to Mr. Vitale, and therefore Ms. Ayers personally, who's a taxpayer, I believe he owes an apology. I also believe that if we had carried on that way doing our jobs, we would have been suspended, with reprimanded, with some kind of action taken. My question to the committee is, what action are we taking against him for his actions that evening?
Appreciate your comments. Anyone else wish to speak? Seeing no one else, I'll entertain a motion to close the public portion. I have a motion. Second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? I'll entertain a motion. Are we going to come back out of executive? Will we be taking action? All right, I'll entertain a motion to go into executive session. We may or may not be coming out to take action. If you wish to stand by, you may, okay? I'll entertain that motion, please.
Motion.
I have a motion.